Harsh, thank you so much for talking to me. This is such a pleasure. What an incredible office you have, infused with youth. It's
Yeah.
just fantastic.
Thank you for having me. But yeah, we're sports, tech, and gaming, so I hope it's going to be full of energy.
Yeah, it's really lovely. It's quite palpable. Okay, but going back to the start,
Yeah,
your father had a substantial company.
yeah.
When you decided to start Dream11, why not join the family business?
I did actually. So I joined the family business for a short period,
Yeah.
and that was right after I came back from school. I was an engineer from UPenn, and I came back, and my dad was in mainly in real estate and finance. So we had this special economic zone that we were setting up, and I joined him there because it's pretty cool. Creating a city as an engineer sounds great, but then as a 22-year-old working on a 20-year project, not as fun, right? You don't go and see things moving every day and see changes because it's a very long project. And at that point, I was itching to do something more in tech. I was a big sports fan. I was an engineer, wanted to do something that married those two. I loved games also. And then the IPL came about. So when the IPL got announced the same year, I said that, I really want to play because I was a big fantasy football fan. So I went looking for fantasy cricket, wasn't there for IPL, and that's when I said that, I have to make fantasy cricket for India, for IPL. And my co-founder, Bhavit, joined me. He's my friend from school, and that's how we started.
Okay, but you faced a lot of rejection. I think over 100 times.
Sure.
So what kept you going?
A little bit of craziness. I think every founder has to be a little crazy,
Yeah.
a little stubborn, excessively optimistic, and you have to just be able to take failure again and again and again,
Yeah.
and not take it as like something that hits you hard. Of course, it hits you.
Yeah.
Getting rejected like over 100 times is not like a walk in the park. It's obviously pretty depressing. But to be able to take that and say, okay, my next pitch is going to be better because here's what I learned,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to make that mistake in my next time. I think that's a way of life for entrepreneurs. I don't think we'll ever stop making mistakes. And if you can just keep putting those mistakes aside, learning from them and moving on and evolving, I think that's what entrepreneurs end up doing. So those rejections were tough, but I think each one set me up to know a little bit about myself, know a little bit about my business. When I started out as I was an engineer pitching an idea.
Yeah.
So someone told me, "What's your TAM?" And I had no idea what TAM.
Yeah.
What is TAM?
Yeah.
Tom, Som,
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah.
I have no idea. And so each meeting teaches you something, and I don't think either way is right. Neither a operating only driven mindset nor a valuation only driven mindset. I think you have to strike the balance.
No, but then it's quite interesting, given whose son you are. That obviously is not something you used or didn't come and use when you're pitching the idea. You were an entrepreneur, sort of with your partner, standing on your own two feet.
I think that I won't shy away from the fact that of course people knew my dad, and the investor circle definitely did.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone is ever going to invest because they know your dad or because they know who you are. I think there's pros and cons of everything. The pro of coming from a business family was that people knew that if this would work, I would have what it takes to scale it up really large, right? That my ambition and my bar for success would be very high. The con though is that people would think that if this doesn't take off, the opportunity cost for me is too high to stay invested into a startup. And so I might not have the tenacity to continue if things get rough. And I would want to quickly jump back to the cushion of the family business. And so there's pros and cons of every pitch, but
That's fair.
I think the overall ideology was that the passion overtook everything else.
Yeah. And eventually that worked for you.
Yeah,
Because you did
eventually
garner
worked out.
investors, you launched your company, and look at where you are today. The kind of growth you've had revenues have crossed 6,000 crores. Your user base is over 200 million users. There have been valuations thrown around of $8 billion. I mean,
That was our last couple of years ago. Since then,
correct. Of
GST has
course,
come in
GST has
and
come and attacked the
well,
industry.
I think. Look, GST when
Yeah.
it came in, it has obviously cut our margins by maybe 50% or more.
Yeah.
But I think for the long run, regulation and clarity is critical to long-term success. So in the short run, is it a hit? 100%. It's like a massive hit to us. But in the long run, I think it will only add more stability and clarity if this industry wants to grow phenomenally in India, if we want to grow the right way, if we want to have companies from gaming which will go public, then regulatory certainty is a critical component of that.
Since we're on GST, this was obviously a big hit. It kind of came out of nowhere, or were you prepared on some level?
No, I think a little bit of both. I think there were always discussions about like what is the right GST the industry should pay going forward. I think the fact that they were looking into GST and finalizing prospectively what would be the right GST to pay came as expected, because there were talks about that for a couple of years, studies being done by the GST Council, in which they actually asked us to come in and opine and educate them about the industry. So that was very systematically done, very officially done. Yeah. The industry was following a certain practice, and we've been following that practice since service tax days. So I think that one came a little bit out of nowhere,
Yeah.
but it's in court now. And so let's see how that goes. Now in India, like in the US and UK, games are classified by either games of skill or games of chance.
Yeah.
Any game which has more chance than skill, let's say roulette, slots, which are basically like flipping a coin or rolling a dice, they all are games of chance because you have no control, right? If you roll a dice 100 times, you'll probably get like 1/6 of the times. And that's very little control you have on the outcomes. It's just math, basic math. If you play a game of chess, if I play against a grandmaster, I will lose 100 out of 100 times. There is no scope for me to win against. So that's one of the bars for ultimate game of skill. 7 times we were challenged in High Court, 7 times in Supreme Court. And each one of those Supreme Court cases has ended with the same outcome, where fantasy sports is proven to be a game of skill, to the extent that it is no longer, the court judgment actually said that this, in just common parlance, that this matter is no longer undecided, and that this matter is now essentially put to rest. So it makes it much tougher for someone to come and challenge it again. So fantasy sports in the format that we have run, which is internationally accepted, is a game of skill legally. Now the government has come and said that there's a certain GST that they believe that they should be charging.
Correct.
Which prospectively as of October 2023 was changed to 28% of deposits, which we have started paying. That has reduced the economics of the industry by about 50%. But I believe that that's an outcome that will work well and it will be a win-win in the long run.
Why is that?
Because of the clarity that the industry so sought after, was so much, in demand for the industry to give the industry in writing the acceptance of real money gaming in India as a regular business activity. We have to look at it as a long-term game. We're here for the long run. And I believe the government is focusing on 2 things. I mean, the tax collection obviously looks at taxes in India.
Yeah.
And how to make sure that they increase the tax collection without hurting the long-term economics of businesses, because we are finally their agents, right? Like in a way that if the businesses grow, the tax department collects more tax. So it doesn't help them if the industry shrinks.
Definitely.
The second part is user harm. And I think that's something that all of us are working on with the government to make sure that sports betting, gambling, the illegal businesses which are working on cash are not as prevalent and are replaced by legal businesses, legally allowed in India, which only do online payments, no cash, pay taxes completely, are based in India, have creating jobs in India, high skilled labor.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a high connect between the government and industry to grow this. I think if I was to estimate the amount of money in the industry, it would be maybe 3 or 4% of the tax demand. So even if the industry was to lose the fight in court, there would be only 3-4% that's even payable, like that's even available to pay to the government. So I think that we're hoping that either through the GST Council or through the court, things will work out for the retrospective tax claim, and that we can continue growing the tax collection of online real money gaming for the government by growing the industry going forward.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed for
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Dream11 has largely been associated with cricket. Do you see interest picking up in other sports?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 12 sports now. So we have cricket, football, kabaddi, basketball, hockey, so on and so forth. And while the others are a smaller base, we see a lot of percentage growth year over year. But the base is so small that compounding will still take effect for over the next 3 or 4 years. But I think 5 years down the line, I would say that cricket might go from, let's say, 90% of the concentration of sports to maybe 75 to 80%. So we do see, growth every year where cricket continues to grow. So the absolute number for cricket continues to grow, but the other sports are growing faster on a clip on a smaller base though.
So then as a share it might shrink a little bit. But
yes, as a share it might shrink, but the whole sports pie
will grow.
Is continuing to grow. Now if you see even at the Olympics, until the last Olympics, nobody knew what a javelin was. And suddenly you have kids running around the country wanting to be a javelin thrower because Neeraj Chopra won gold and now silver. So we're seeing the same thing with like other sports like shooting, archery, boxing, sailing, badminton, hockey. There's so much now diverse demand in different sports, either due to our Olympic athletes or the athletes working, performing well on those sports, even outside the Olympic Games and Commonwealth, Asian Games. I think the government has also pushed a very strong mandate to be a more, a nation that's more focused on sports, on diverse sports, on health and nutrition. So
I think we still have a long way to go there because our Olympic performance is still not anywhere where it should be. Let's face it.
I won't disagree that this Olympics was slightly, subpar to the outcome that we wanted.
Yeah.
But I think that, one of my favorite quotes is actually suddenly, then gradually.
Yeah.
Gradually, then suddenly, of course. And if you look at what our Olympics performance has been, this time we had, I think, 6 athletes come forth. If 3 of them, half of them came on the podium, right? And if we had gotten 10 medals, suddenly we would call it one of the best performances by India ever. 7 I think is the best performance. So then we would say that this is all on track. But I think just like that, in the coming Olympics, maybe in LA, I think I would almost underwrite a double-digit medal performance in LA by India. The amount of investment by the government, by private companies working together and investing in sports in India, I don't think there's any way we don't cross double-digit medals tally in LA in 2028.
Should we bet on that?
100%.
Maybe create something on the app which sort of gives the odds of that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We're a platform.
That's a joke. Okay, so why do you think your users are predominantly in smaller towns? Like there's a much lower section which is tier 1 and tier 2, and actually it's outside of that your users lie. So why do you think that's the case?
Actually, it's just based on population of India. It's literally, if you see the population density of India, it's highly correlating with our population density across India. So wherever there's larger internet population, we have a larger presence. And inversely to wherever there's a smaller internet population, I think the fact is that some other apps in tech have limited growth opportunities because of offline presence is required. So because of the fact that our product is purely digital, we can penetrate and go to every household faster than they can because we don't have any physical good or asset to provide. And so I don't believe that ours is the anomaly. I just think that what you're seeing our penetration to be will be that of every other app, just if you just give it some time.
No, but also the fact that it is cricket
Yes, of course.
obviously
We're a nation of billion fans, right?
That's the thing.
So yeah.
Okay, the term unicorn was used every week at the peak of the boom, the startup boom that took place. There have been various phases of that over the last few years, but let's say, even around COVID and things like that, many have now gone bust or have dropped substantially in valuation. Now, you obviously have seen challenges from external factors like GST, but other than that, you've had a very sustained level of growth. You've focused, I think, on profitability more than other startups. So what do you think has sustained you?
I think first of all, Mumbai tech has a predominance of being focused on running businesses that actually get to profitability. Maybe it's just the environment that we live and work around. In fact, we started Tech Entrepreneurs Association of Mumbai, and we have 50 members, and over half of them are profitable. So it's not the anomaly in Mumbai. I think sometimes because of other areas, growth becomes super sexy and we don't talk about profitability, but I don't think they have to be either or. You can have sustainable growth and focus on actually being a not-for-profit company if that's what you file to be, and actually have a profit, right?
Yeah.
So if you're a not-for-profit company, great. If you're a for-profit company, then you should at some point be for-profit, right?
Yeah.
And return that value to shareholders. So I think, first of all, being in Bombay, being in Mumbai helps. I think the other part is that we've focused on doing a few things really well and worked really hard on saying no to a lot of good opportunities.
Yeah.
So I think that's the hardest when when you have this high growth, people are saying, go do X, Y, Z, launch in A, B, C geographies. And I think we just stayed focused on spots and India. We instead diversified.
Yeah, because you don't really want to go global. I think you've said that before, that
the whole world is coming to India.
Yeah.
Why are Indians so much in a hurry to go global unless you've saturated your local market? We're at 230 million users for Dream11. We have 500 million more to go. Right? We have the world's largest local market. Why shouldn't we focus on something we can be specializing in? And I think that for most of us, when you said unicorn, I think the key to being a unicorn is actually also being able to be a cockroach, right? You have to be able to be a unicorn when things are flying, and a cockroach when things are nuclear.
Is this cockroach time?
This is cockroach time. And I think the last year and this year has been cockroach time.
Yeah.
For us, definitely after the GST hit was hard cockroach time, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to go back and say that like 50% of our numbers are cut. And now we have to be able to survive and then thrive tomorrow. So I think there are always years where, like couple of years back, it was just unicorns everywhere. Last year it was all about cockroach. I think next year actually, we'll see the advent of again that unicorn time, right? So it comes in cycles.
Yeah. But I think with you also, I mean, given fundraising, I've seen with a lot of tech companies is a make or break.
Yeah.
It is a very difficult time.
Yes.
And it's right down to the sort of crunch.
Of course.
And you, on the other hand, have had several rounds of very successful fundraising.
No, we have not.
Fairly.
No.
You have good investors.
We have great investors.
Who've believed in you, who have sort of put their money behind you.
Of course. We have, but our Series A, B, like our early fundraising journey, which is where the largest, they took our Series A took us 3 years. We had 2 years of rejections and 1 year from when we said yes to actually closing it. Vani and Shashin, Vani from Kalari led the round with Shashin and Think Investments, and they were amazing, and they're still on my board, and I count on them for all the advice. Navroz from Falcon Edge was one of our earliest, this is like 15 years ago, was one of our earliest believers. He's still on my board. But we've had to fight for every round. Series A, B, C were all like very traumatic events.
And many learnings, I'm sure.
But I think like how Jensen says this from NVIDIA, right?
Yeah, correct.
He says this, that I wish that you struggle and that you have a lot of these issues, because that's what builds character.
Yeah.
And only when you see those lows of how hard it was, you can actually realize how lucky and fortunate you are to have that, and double down like none other when things are going right.
Yeah, because you truly believe in your idea and you truly believe in your company. And despite all the setbacks of the last 2 years, you believe that it can sustain growth.
Absolutely.
And has a long way to go.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, we'll find one.
Of course you will. I have no doubt about that. Okay, you have an amazing partnership with your co-founder.
Yeah.
How do you manage disagreements? I mean, your company is now at a scale where there can be serious sort of disagreements, ego, all of that comes, the face of the company, all of that. So how do you manage that relationship?
I don't argue with Bhavit, because you can't win an argument with Bhavit.
Okay.
So you'd rather just not argue. But, I think the best way is to actually have a long-term relation. And so we've known each other since school. So we were like, we've known each other since we were 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so that really helps, because you have a different level of comfort, having known each other for 30 plus years. And I think when you end up growing through a lot of problems, setting up the company over 10 years of people not really believing in us, you can actually figure it out when things are successful. And I think that both of us have respect for each other, are able to carve out what each other does, and allow each other to take a call on those items and disagree and commit. So if I don't agree with something he's doing, I'll put my point across, but then it's his call and I'll disagree and commit. And if it's wrong...
That's interesting, disagree and commit.
Yeah, it's a very standard phase that it's okay. You don't have to agree on everything. You won't. You can't. It's not possible for two people to agree on everything. But as long as you are letting someone take responsibility and keep learning from it, things will work out.
There have also been some fascinating stories. Like somebody I read had won a crore. I think it was a guy in a small town. It's a barber. Are there a lot of stories like that have come out of...
Hundreds.
Yeah.
I think there would be hundreds of people that have won a crore plus in this IPL alone. If you actually compare that to some other like KBC, for example, which is phenomenal. It's done, it changed the way the nation looks at live TV shows. They would give out maybe 1 or 2 crorepatis in a season, right? They would have 1 or 2 people winning a crore. We had hundreds of people winning a crore plus in this year's IPL. So,
that's amazing.
So we have, and they're from all over India. So some other time maybe we can talk about their stories, but it's amazing. One of them paid off the loans of his entire village with the winnings. One of them built a house and called it the dream house. And they send us all these photos and videos and share with us these stories. Yeah. One of them paid for his friend's sister's wedding, which was going to get called off because they didn't have the money. I mean, these are just like phenomenal stories we hear about.
So IPL continues to be very important.
Yes.
To Dream11. It's not as if the years that have gone by, it's diminished in any way. If anything, it's increased.
Yeah, so IPL is 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
It's our most important 2 months.
Yeah.
But the business runs for 12 months. So we cover all sports globally for the Indian fans. But of course, IPL is the alpha of all of them by a long distance.
But like your marketing means Dream11 is everywhere. You're sponsoring everything that's important when it comes to sports, whether it's IPL. And what are your marketing costs today? Like, where do you see the thrust for you?
Our marketing costs have stayed relatively flat over the last couple of years, and I think the point is that we are now partners with most of the leagues. We have a lot of athletes that endorse us. So we split our marketing costs between brand marketing and digital marketing, which is customer acquisition.
Yeah.
And that's now become part of our science.
Okay. So next 5 years.
Yeah.
So first, tell me, what would be the average bet size, not bet size,
Participation fee.
participation fee
Sure.
that someone would
About
place?
62 rupees.
Really?
That's it. This game is not made for like high cash in, cash out. In fact, like our average ticket size is about 62 rupees.
Yeah.
And our over 99% of our entire user base, over 16 years in our product, cumulatively in their lifetime have not won or lost more than 10,000 rupees. It is not about, so I always say we're like the popcorn to your movie, right?
Yeah.
If popcorn was there right now, you probably wouldn't have popcorn, right? Because why would you have popcorn while you're sitting in a meeting? But if it's in a movie, you have to have popcorn.
Yeah.
It just makes your movie better.
Yeah.
Fantasy sports is the popcorn to sports.
Tell me your favorite sports and favorite sports people.
Football. Football
No,
is actually
across the board. Cricket, tell me your top two.
Oh,
that you love.
That's going to be.
I'm
a
sure
long
you can
list.
come up with your top two.
Dhoni will always be my.
He's mine too.
And Sachin. I mean, just
Yeah.
from the generation that I've grown up with,
Yeah.
Dhoni and Sachin were those change agents that Sachin just because 20 years of leading India and Dhoni because of the change.
Yeah.
And because he was a brand ambassador. Football, I know it's stereotypical, but obviously I've grown up just emulating Ronaldo and worshipping him. I'm a big Manchester United fan.
Yeah.
The second one, I don't want to say Messi because it's too, Ronaldo, Messi.
Yeah.
I would say someone like a Roy Keane from Manchester United. But let's stop there. Otherwise, I'll just keep going on and on about every single sport and every single
many
athlete.
sports to talk about and athletes to talk about. I mean, you have tennis, you have so many.
Too many.
Lastly,
Yes.
you and your wife, I know she's a dentist, you have kids, you have a very low profile, given your profile. You've obviously made that choice. Why do you think that suits you and your lifestyle?
I don't think we have a low profile. I think we've chosen not to have a high profile. I don't think like our lifestyle or our mannerism should change with, how you do at work. I think our personal lives are personal and continue to be personal, and we like to live our lives the same way.
What advice would you give to a young entrepreneur? Because entrepreneurship is hard.
Yeah.
It's 24/7.
Yes.
On certain occasions, it's blood, sweat, and tears.
Absolutely.
It's a fear of failure.
Yep.
It's all of that.
Yeah.
What is the biggest lesson you've learned, and what would you like to pass on?
Maybe just a couple that work on painkillers, not on vitamins. I say that a lot, but there's too many people chasing an opportunity and not enough people chasing a real problem out there, which if you solve, people will not be able to live without. That's a painkiller. A vitamin is something that it's just nice to have. And if they don't have it tomorrow, it's okay. Those are not the businesses that get made, in my opinion, over time. The painkillers are. Mm-hmm. And I think just have that degree of passion and expertise in your core field that nobody can match. Because it's going to be a rough ride. It's going to be a roller coaster. And when things are going up, it's all going to be gravy and great. But when things go down, if you're not the last person on the planet to give up on it, then you probably won't make it.
Wow, Harsh, thank you so much. That's such a great note to end on. And I've learned so much, and I hope this year turns around for you.
Thank you. I hope so too.